I would like to take a flashback to the 90s and tackle another that would never work in therapy. But unlike some of the ones we've done in the past, this does not directly deal with a therapist scene. So, are you on board at least to see where this
Always, but we
goes?
don't know enough
I'll
to
I'll
dissent.
figure it out. You keep going.
Okay, so Dan,
What would you do if I said no?
Yeah.
this comes from this little known show, Friends, and these two characters, there's Ross and there's Rachel.
Wait,
Anyway,
Ross
Whoa.
and
What?
Rach. Okay,
They
go
sound
ahead.
like they could be a hot couple.
Yeah.
maybe a little bit on and off. It's hard to read them sometimes. Ross is known for the pivot, if nothing else. So,
Okay. Well, please describe the situation. We'll happily
okay.
work on it.
Anyway, they get stuck in this repeating loop where the relationship conflict becomes a debate about the technical definition of on a break. Ross
Oh
argues
yeah.
that the status change justifies his actions. Rachel experiences it as betrayal and abandonment. The argument turns into litigation. Who's right? What counts? What the label means? And it eclipses the real emotional injury and the repair work needed here. So I'm wondering, in the sitcom world, these couples get stuck litigating facts like that. And the relationship is kind of this trial, and there's this argument about trying to win the debate and who's right. But I'm wondering, how do you shift from fact fighting into impact and meaning and repair with a situation like this?
What he's asking us to do, Dan, is how do we help people learn how to have the conversation and make the rom-com or the sitcom a lot less funny and interesting?
Which is accurate. I mean, that particular situation, if I'm remembering correctly from 30 years ago, they had broken up. Ross slept with another woman. They got back together.
Yes, but I think at issue is the definition of on a break. Is on a breakup, or is that a, hey, we are distancing ourselves as two romantic people, but we have not entirely disentangled our romantic lives? And I
Mm,
think that's the issue that Rachel has. I mean, Rachel is under this false assumption that we are still committed. We are just not engaging in and pursuing this as a romantic relationship, but I still remain committed to you. Now, whether she meant that or not, or she was just pissy and jealous because Ross slept with someone before she found a new romantic partner, I don't know, right? That's not how the show played out.
yes.
But clearly Ross gets painted as the oblivious guy, and goes out and seeks solace or companionship with someone else. I actually don't remember how
I
temporally
I think
close
it's
these things
funny
were.
because in my recollection,
Uh,
again, 30 years old,
mhm.
they had formally broken up and then they formally got back together. So it was a full breakup. Um, but I don't actually know that that's true because
Michael's
I'm
Googling
remembering this.
this because none
Michael's
of us
definitely
remember
Googling
this
it, but I'm
exactly.
remembering it as a breakup, and I remember going, "Well, what's the?" I mean,
Yeah.
clearly they were broken up. Like, why?
I,
Why is she
I,
holding this against him? But I could be wrong in my recollection.
right. My recollection is it was a slightly more ambiguous, but the intention was it was a
Mm,
breakup and Rachel got upset.
right, but
Michael,
but
are you
but
going to settle a debate here?
not
I,
yet.
I mean, I think you guys are right. I mean,
No, no, no. We've
it
got
was.
Well,
slightly different
we have
takes.
different perspectives. What was the actual storyline here?
We need you to rabbit hole this for
All
us,
right,
if
Yeah,
I'll
nothing
figure it
else.
out. You guys
you
keep
rabbit
going.
hole
I'll
that,
I'll
but
find
here
it for
here
you.
but here's the pivot though that we're talking about.
Pivot.
The pivot is moving away from this question of was it a break or wasn't it a break, and moving towards how did each one of them feel in that moment.
Right.
Rachel felt betrayed. Whether we can say that the betrayal was reasonable and rational or not, she felt betrayed. Ross felt falsely accused. Whether we can say that it's reasonable or unreasonable doesn't matter. He felt falsely accused. Now they have to work through these feelings that each one of them have that is based on their perception of the situation, no matter how the actual situation was. Those perceptions matter. So that's the pivot I would be making with Ross and Rachel were they in my office.
Yes. And I totally agree because these regrettable incidences absolutely happen. And misperceptions and misrecollections. And we have people in our office all of the time swearing up and down 6 ways to their grandmother that this is the way it occurred, and that their intention somehow was known or clear to the other. And really, what we're doing is not trying to relitigate or solve. What you're saying here is so important, because what we're doing is we're leaning into essentially that psychologist trope of how did that make you feel? Like, how did you feel about that? And really getting the relationship partner not to agree with the circumstances that led them to that feeling, but the experience of that feeling, period. And
Right.
when you can do that, you can lean in and really let your partner know that you can see their hurt, you can witness it, and that goes, I think, a long way to repairing said rupture, right?
hmm
And increases the likelihood that then you might get a response from the other. So, had Ross leaned into that feeling of betrayal for Rachel, not necessarily throwing himself under the bus for causing that betrayal, but understanding
hmm
how she arrived there emotionally,
hmm
she then might be able to turn to him and really lean in and understand that feeling of false. What was the word you used? False accusation. You used a really
But yeah,
great
he
falsely
felt
accused.
falsely accused.
Yeah, and she might be able to lean into that, and then we wouldn't get the "we were at a break" funny moment, right?
Right.
Because it would
Right.
have just passed as a
Yeah.
thing that
And
they
and
have.
yeah, they failed to have that good conversation,
Yeah,
which again would have ruined the entire plot line of "But we were on a break" that we're still talking about 30 friggin' years later.
right. Which
So,
I would also wonder if the writers intended, or sometimes they stumble their way through and go, "Oh, this seems kind of like a good idea. Let's stick with that." Right? This was kind of
right,
funny. And
right.
so,
So,
yeah. All right, Michael.
So I find it kind of funny that the facts matter here because it is really
They
not
don't.
about who's right or wrong, right?
They don't. You're right.
But to set the story straight, really what happens is Rachel does say maybe we should take a break, and then Ross calls her back because he's feeling upset, and he hears another man in the background and hangs up as she is saying, "I don't want to break." And so that's where like the
mm,
confusion falls in there.
Mm.
And then, yeah, they argue back and forth whether or not they actually were or what that break meant. Like nobody really defined what that meant, which I think is ultimately where you guys are getting at is like also, how do you define what a break is? You know, are you
Right.
free
And
to
I think
see
it's
other
so
partners or not?
hard. It's so hard in that moment. You're feeling emotional and vulnerable and raw to say, what does this mean? What,
right.
what kind of parameters are we putting into place here? But because it's often such an escalated moment, we're not getting clarity. We're just getting all of these hurt feelings and sort of this sort of shutdown. So we don't have good clarity about what this meant. And I found myself wondering, because I don't remember how quickly Ross repartnered with someone after that moment. My brain tells me it happened relatively quickly,
Yeah, that was
getting him the dog, but
my 30-year-old recollection was that
yeah.
he went out and hooked up that night or something. Like,
Yes, he overheard Mark, and I can't remember who Mark is, but he
Oh, I think
overhears
he's a
Mark in the
coworker that he was always
background.
jealous of.
And then he hangs up and essentially goes seeking solace, like Gail said, I think, earlier in the conversation. So
Yeah.
it happens very quickly at that point. So,
Yeah. And I think the complicating factor here is that it's Mark. He hears Mark's voice, and he's always been feeling kind of uncertain about Rachel's relationship with Mark. Dan, you're making a face like I remember this detail from 30 years ago. Here's the deal.
I don't, I
Uh,
don't,
well,
I don't remember this detail
so
at all.
I don't know if you know this, but Friends is playing like all of the time.
Yeah,
It's in rerun, like you would not believe.
yeah.
And so a number of years ago, and I don't remember exactly how or why, but when our family was traveling, we didn't have our usual Netflix on or whatever. We had whatever was available on in the hotel television, and Friends happened to be on, and I think Michael and I were like, "Oh, this is kind of funny and it's familiar and it can't be that bad, right?" Which, by the way, does not age well. But beyond that,
Mhm.
the kids watched it with us, and it has become a family tradition to watch
Um,
Friends in the evening when we're traveling. If we've got nothing else we're doing and settling into the hotel, we'll watch a couple of episodes of Friends. Now, the downside of this is I think we've seen the same episodes repeatedly. Like, I don't know how we have managed to see like the very first and maybe even the very last episodes like multiple times. We don't travel that often. We just seem to like catch the
Yeah,
cycle.
all right.
I don't know how that's
Yeah,
working,
yeah.
but our kids find it very, very amusing and are now teenagers quoting a TV show from 30 years ago.
Wonderful, wonderful. Did not know that. But the one thing I want to kind of cap this off with is something we
Mhm.
say a lot on this show. Almost every rom-com could be cut short to about like 5 or 6 minutes by a really good conversation. And oh, yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
With both people being open to hearing the other's perspective and really kind of hashing it out. And then like, oh, yeah, all right, now I understand. But
And I will cap your cap with saying when we do this for folks in therapy, you watch the emotion just go,
yeah,
and they feel so much better.
I mean,
But it's terrible television.
yeah, it was an awful situation in this Ross Rachel thing. Again, obviously really well contrived by the writers of the show, or at least really well superficially contrived by the writers of the show back in the day. But like, if they sat down and went, really tried to understand the other's perspective, oh my God, I could totally see how you felt in that moment that I had connected with someone else and was already in a relationship and it was over. And well, I don't think people should be like sleeping with someone that night. Like, I can't hold against you that you did this. Oh gosh, I can really see how you wanted us to get together and how badly betrayed and hurt you felt by my sleeping with someone the very night that you wanted to get back together, and how painful and awful that would have been for you to discover that. And they can't undo the fact that he slept with someone when she thought they were together and he thought they were separated, but they can have a conversation about their feelings and potentially get to a place where it's not where they can come to some understanding about that together. It wouldn't have been funny.
Agreed. Nor would it have been funny if, and I'm going to call out a segment that is either yet to come or has already come. I don't know how these are going to get stitched together, but if you jump in an agreement too
Mhm.
quickly, perhaps you're missing some information.
Right.
If Rachel hadn't agreed to something that she wasn't actually on board with, it would have been a
Right.
lot less funny.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me through another that would never work in therapy. Hopefully, that gives people some idea of what might be in store if they actually found themselves in a similar situation. Um,
It might also tell people how unfun it is to watch some of these things with a therapist next to you because you'd be like, "Ah, listen to how to do it."
Just talk to each other. Just have a conversation, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.